What's up YouTube, it's JackalGoldKick, and this is going to be my first ever video game review. I've never done one of these before, so let me know how I do and let me know if there's anything I should improve, criticism, all that stuff, because this is my first ever time doing it. I had a poll up where I asked people if they wanted to see me do a thoughts videos on games I liked or review style. Everyone picked review style, nobody picked thought style. So thanks for letting me know, because I couldn't really decide which one I wanted to do. So we'll go with the review style since that's what people wanted, and that was one of the choices I was going with myself. So yeah, this will be my first ever video game review. Let me know how my style is. I'm going to try to do the best I can. Yeah, let's do this. So this will be my first ever video game review. I'm going to be reviewing the video game Resident Evil 3 Remake from 2020. So this is like, you know, the remake of Resident Evil 3 from the PS1 that came out in 2020. Pretty much completed this recently, got all the trophies in it, did everything in the game. So I'm going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about Resistance yet, the other game that's included in this, because I just specifically focus on Resident Evil 3 Remake, doing everything in that game. Haven't even messed with Resistance yet. So maybe I'll do like a separate video on Resistance down the line whenever I do get to that, but for now we're just going to focus on Resident Evil 3 Remake from 2020. So yeah, let's do this. Our first ever video game review. We're going to review Resident Evil 3 Remake from 2020. Now before we review this game, I want to give kind of a backstory. So, alright, back when I first played Resident Evil 3 Remake in the year 2020, I didn't like my first experience with this game, because what happened was, before I played this game back in 2020, my first experience is, there was a lot of like mixed negative reception about Resident Evil 3 Remake, and I was listening to a lot of it, watching a lot of it, and what I pretty much did is I took everyone else's opinions and reception and perception on the game, and I made it mine pretty much. Instead of just going into this game with my own opinion and to find out what I thought, I took everyone else's thoughts and made it mine. So with that being attached, when I played Resident Evil 3 Remake, I didn't really enjoy my experience because I already went into it wanting to hate it, having everyone's perspective be mine. I rushed myself through the game, didn't really enjoy it, was disappointed by it, and just went into the game wanting to hate it. It was just an overall bad experience, and I definitely regret it. And it's definitely, you know, looking back, that's not the way I would have played it. So yeah, I only played it once back in the day in 2020 on my brother's PC, and it wasn't a good way to go about it, you know, because I'm not saying people didn't have legit criticisms or legit issues with this game, but I should have went into the game with my own opinion and figure out what I thought of it, rather than letting everyone else's opinions and reception become mine, because it really hurt and ruined my first experience with this game, and I rushed through it, and I just wasn't able to enjoy it, and it was a bad experience, you know. So I'm glad I was able to re-get this game, played on the PS4 in 2022, and just get a new experience on it and go into it without being clouded by that stuff, going into it with my own opinion of what I thought of it this time, playing it the right way, doing it the right way. And I definitely enjoyed my time a lot more this time around compared to when I first played it. So I just wanted to tell that story real quick because I feel like that was important. So yeah, let's review Resident Evil 3 Remake from 2020. So when it comes to Resident Evil 3 Remake, gameplay wise, this is pretty much like survival horror mixed with survival action. The gameplay is pretty similar to Resident Evil 2 Remake. It's like a third-person over-the-shoulder shooter. You have, you know, you use guns. You have melee weapons like a knife. You have a dodge system with Jill or Carlos where you can dodge from enemies. If you pull off a perfect dodge, time will get slowed down for a minute. You can shoot an enemy. You can only dodge like 3 times before it has to recharge or refresh, because they don't want you to abuse it. So you have the dodge system, over the shoulder third-person shooter, survival horror / survival action gameplay. There's like gas tanks in certain areas you can use on enemies. There's like electric boxes sometimes you can shoot to stun enemies. There's like grenades. There's files and notes you can read. There's like sort of collectibles where it's like some of these Charlie dolls you can shoot. There's like key items you pick up to either use on certain other things in certain areas, or to combine with certain other things, or key items to combine together for a certain story, or even like puzzle related stuff. There's also like gun parts you can collect and combine with certain guns. There's certain guns you can collect and things of that nature. There's like areas you explore and pick up items and environment and stuff. So it's pretty much like a over-the-shoulder third-person shooter slash survival action slash survival horror game, and you can like you explore some areas. There's a rare amount of puzzles you interact with, not that many. Like I said, there's files you can read. Very few rare amount of puzzles. The Charlie doll collectibles, guns you can collect, gun parts, shooting gas tanks, things of that nature. That's pretty much the gist of the gameplay itself. When it comes to like the story and the concept of the game, it's basically set in Raccoon City. Zombie outbreak occurred in this city. You're playing as Jill Valentine and Carlos in some sections, and all these characters are basically trying to escape from Raccoon City and survive in the zombie outbreak. And at the same time, Jill Valentine's trying to escape and stay away from the nemesis creature that's constantly coming after her that Umbrella made, because his goal is to kill Stars, which is Jill and Brad in the game. And he's constantly going after Jill, and she has to get away from him. So she has to get away from him while there's also like a subway she has to help fix up with UBCS and their team to get the survivors out of there and survive in the zombie-infected city while also trying to escape from there. And then another thing that happens in the story is like it's confirmed that the government is going to release a bomb on the city because it's such a deadly outbreak. So there's a chance they could maybe get a vaccine to stop them from blowing it up, or they just have to try to get out of there before the bomb blows the city up. So that's kind of the story itself and where you're at, which is Raccoon City. So that's like the gameplay and the story. The graphics in this game are pretty damn good. The graphics in this game do look pretty good. The character models are good. The graphics are pretty good. The visuals are good. The game has some really good color to it. It supports HDR even on the PS4 Slim, which is really nice. The gun sound effects are pretty cool. The sound effects for the guns are really nice for sure. The enemy designs are pretty cool. The zombies look cool. A lot of the other enemies look cool. The Drain Demos look really creepy and nasty looking. The Hunter Betas look fucking awesome. They're like these giant reptiles. The Lickers look pretty cool. The zombie dogs look pretty cool. Nemesis himself does look pretty cool. So most of the character designs, the enemy designs are pretty top notch. I do have some criticism though when it comes to character designs. One of the things I don't like about Resident Evil 3 Remake is I'm not a fan of Jill Valentine's design in this game. And I'm not talking about her face, I'm more so talking about her outfits. Because Capcom is known for having like iconic character designs and having good designs for characters. And in my opinion, Jill Valentine's design in this game, I'm not a fan of it. I don't like her outfit in this game because it's just bland, boring, generic, and it's just dull. Everybody else looks cool in this game with their outfit. Carlos, Nikolai, all of them, And RE2 Remake kind of had this problem as well, to be fair. Like, I wasn't a fan of Claire's outfit either because it just came off as bland. So, yeah, that's one of my issues with Resident Evil 3 Remake is I'm just not a fan of Jill's design. I think they should have went back to the drawing board. They should have came up with a much better outfit for Jill because her base outfit in this game sucks. It just comes off as very bland and just dull, lacks style, just doesn't feel or look iconic whatsoever. It's a lame outfit. I'm definitely not a fan of it. But everyone else looks good for the most part. But Jill, I don't like her outfit just because it just looks so bland. Such a bland style, just tank top and jeans. It's very generic and dull, and I think they could have did something way better with her outfit. I had the same issue with Claire in RE2 Remake. I found her outfit incredibly generic, and it's weird because Leon's redesign was great in RE2 Remake, but Claire's wasn't. And like I said, I mean outfit, not face. RE3 Remake, Carlos's redesign's great. Nikolai, all the other characters have really good redesigns for the most part. But then when it comes to Jill, her redesign's lame. She has like one of the most bland outfits I've ever seen. It's lame. And it's ridiculous because Capcom is known for having iconic styles with, clothes and stuff. But yeah, when it comes to Resident Evil 3 Remake, you start in like this hotel area that Jill's living at, this apartment complex. You get out of there, you go like in the subway area. So when it comes to like the areas of the game, you have the hotel area you go through, then you go through kind of city streets, you go through like this bar jack area with Brad, then you go through like alleyways, then you go through like this Dario's warehouse, and there's like a parking garage roof. So you kind of going through areas in Raccoon City, then you go through a subway area. When it comes to those areas, another thing I'm not a fan of in Resident Evil 3 Remake, I don't like like some of the stuff in the hotel area or an apartment complex, and on top of the parking garage roof. A lot of that stuff, especially, I would say a lot of the stuff in the first like half of this game before you get to the subway with Carlos, a lot of it is very like scripted, on rails, you know, it's like scripted cinematic movie like on rails type stuff, if you get what I mean, similar to like a lot of the stuff in RE6, and I'm not a fan of that. It's not something I'm a fan of, and I wish they didn't do that because it makes it feel less like a game, and on repeat playthroughs it's kind of just drags ass. So I'm not a fan of that design. I wish they would have just let it be a fucking video game where you just play the fucking thing. I hate how a lot of video games nowadays want to be like movies, so they got to have this on rail stuff. So I'm not a fan of that stuff. In the first half of the game, like I said, going through Jill's apartment area, getting out of there, getting away from Nemesis, going through like Stair Complex, then you go through the city streets as Brad, then you go in Bar and Jack's. He gets bitten by a zombie, he stays behind to protect Jill, then you go through like some more city streets, you meet Dario. Jill tries to have him go with him, but that isn't what ends up happening. You know, and the areas are cool, but I just don't like the structure, how it's so limited and it's just on rails where it doesn't really feel like a video game. It's more like you're just playing a scene from a movie. You know, I hate that style. It's not the worst thing ever maybe on the first playthrough, but it really hurts the future playthroughs. I just don't like that in my video games. I prefer my video games to be more like a fucking video game, you know, like Dead Rising 1, where it wasn't like scripted on the rails. You could control where you went and you're going from place to place. That's how Resident Evil 4, you know, so I'm not a fan of that style. I don't know why they did that in Resident Evil 3 Remake. It's annoying. So that's kind of what you're doing in the intro. It's just on the rails stuff, dealing with zombies, running from Nemesis, meeting Brad, getting your pistol, getting in the car, the helicopter blows up in the parking garage roof. So a lot of those areas in the first half, it's just like this on rails stuff. I'm just not a fan of that. I hate it. I wish they didn't do that. But after that, you know, you meet Carlos, he saves Jill from Nemesis, and once you meet with him and go on the subway, then it gets better. It's no longer the stupid ass on rails scripted cinematic crap. So then the gameplay finally becomes, you know, where you can actually play it like a video game, and you're shooting zombies, you're picking up items, exploring a few areas here and there, reading notes, things like that. You know, the first area you're in is pretty cool. You go through the subway. You know, you got the typewriter and you got this item box that you use mostly in the game. So you go out of there, you go through Raccoon City itself, this area you go through. It's a pretty cool area. You go through the city streets, you go through this alleyway, and there's like this small like Mega Man shop that you can explore later on if you have like this lockpick. That's what I talked about with key items. Then you have this other area you can explore. It's like a mini supermarket. Then you have this entrance that leads to a donut shop, and then in the front there's something on the right that leads to the substation. So it's kind of like a sort of small, semi-open world, maybe Raccoon City area you can explore. So it's a cool area. You know, there's a lot of color. There's a lot of distinctive landmarks. However, one of my issues with Raccoon City itself is it's too limited. I'm not saying make Resident Evil 3 Remake an open world game, but it just feels like Raccoon City itself is way too limited. It feels like they could have opened it up a little bit more. You know, one of my issues with a lot of video games, especially that is set in a city, is a lot of times they'll set a video game in a city and the city itself is so limited and just strict where a lot of places are closed off. I never understood it because a game like Dead Rising 1, it's set in a shopping mall and everything's opened up. But yet games like this set in a city, not everything's opened up. It makes no sense because there's a crab shop you can't even go into. There's the supermarket you go into. You can clearly see a basement. You can't even go down there. The Mega Man type store. You can't even go into the rest of the area. So that's one of the things I don't like about the structure of the city. Is it's a cool city, the parts you do get to explore, but it's too closed off. I'm not saying make it open world, but make some of it opened up. It should be a little bit more opened up. Not everything needs to be closed off. So, but aside from that problem, the city is cool. So you go, zombies show up, you shoot the tank, you go through the city. So it is a cool area. You got to get like this fire hose to put out this fire because you got to get to the substation. Because Jill was talking with the UBCS members she met, you know, Carlos, and they got to get the subway up and running so we can get the survivors out of there. So she has to restore power. But before she goes to the substation, she has to get a firehouse nozzle. So you go look for that and you explore some areas. You know, there's like files you can read. You know, you can open this one safe to get a part for your pistol. Then there's like a donut shop And then you can open like this locker with a lock pick as well, and there's zombies you got to deal with and stuff. And there's like some, you know, side stuff you can explore, like getting a shotgun and stuff. So you go and get the firehouse nozzle, as well as if you go to the other areas and explore them. You go put the fire out. Then you meet Murphy, who is another character they don't do a whole lot with, much like Brad, which is kind of unfortunate. I'm not saying every single character has to survive, but they should have did a little bit more with Murphy. He gets killed by Nikolai. You meet Nikolai for the first time. He's a pretty good villain. The voice actor does a great job for him. That's one thing I will say real quick that I forgot to include. The cast for this game is pretty good. All the voice actors definitely did a great job in this game, and they did a really good job of voice acting the characters for sure. So yeah, you meet Nikolai. He's a pretty good villain, you know, cool bad guy. After you meet him, you make your way to the substation. You deal with some zombie dogs. You fight them for the first time, and then you go to the substation to restore power, and you deal with the new enemy, which is the drain demos. It's like these it's kind of like, they're kind of like spiders, but they look like they're a mix between like some kind of plant thing and kind of a spider, and they can jump on you and put maggots in your mouth. You got to eat a herb to get them out of you. So you got to deal with them constantly coming after you, and you got to restore the power while you're dealing with them. The drain demos were a cool enemy, but I thought they were very underused, like very underused. I mean, that's like the only time you see them. You go to the substation, you fight the drain demos, and that's it. That's the only time you see them, you know, which is unfortunate. They should have been used more in the game, you know. So that's the only time you see them, which has another problem with the game. You know, the drain demos were underused. That's another thing I wanted to say. You know, earlier before we went to the substation, you fought zombie dogs. I also feel like the zombie dogs in this game were very underused as well. You just didn't see them enough. They're only in the game a few times, so some of the enemy types in this game are definitely very underused in my opinion. So the zombie dog should have been used more. They should have used the drain demos more. But after you get out of the substation, restore the power, Jill has a conversation with Carlos, and then you go after, you go back to the subway, and Nemesis shows up, and you got to get away from him. Cool thing about Nemesis, if you attack him or damage him enough, he drops these supply boxes with items. He works a lot like Mr. X, chases you and stalks you. You shoot him in the chest or with explosives, or just put him down with enough ammo, or use grenades to take him out, only temporarily though, and he chases you. So you got to deal with him while you're trying to go back and, because you had to, like, you know, turn the substation power on, and you had to do that to lead the subway train in the right direction. So you go back there. Then once you get the subway infrastructure back online, pretty simple puzzle, you know, pretty basic brain dead puzzle. You got to do pretty much to get the subway train back online. Then you make your way back, and there's like a new enemy type that gets introduced. It's like this Nemesis parasite enemies. Reminds me of like the RE4 Las Plagas. Basically, Nemesis like infects the zombies with his like hand, and some head stuff shows up. So you got to deal with those. Pretty challenging enemies. Kind of hard to deal with sometimes, because if their thing is closed, it's hard to shoot them. They can hit you from far away. So it's a new enemy type that shows up. You make your way back to the subway, and you're meeting with the characters again, and you get back to the subway station, and then after that happens, Jill decides to, because Nemesis shows up, and Jill decides to lead him away, because Nemesis is after her, not everybody else, so she leads him away, and then you end up in the sewers, so you got to find your way back to Carlos and them, while you were, you know, getting Nemesis out of there pretty much, and you go to the sewers. The sewers is a pretty cool area as well. I do like the sewers in this game. It's kind of like an RE2 remake type area, but I like the sewers. It's a good area in this game, you know. This is where you get like a grenade launcher and ammo for grenade launcher. This is a cool area. You get a new enemy type in this area. It's basically like these, I think they're called hunter gammas. They basically look like giant frogs, giant toads pretty much. They're a pretty cool enemy. They got a cool design. They're a pretty cool enemy. You can damage them from the outside, but the only time you can really damage them like that is if their mouth is exposed, either by chasing after you, or if you shoot them enough and they fall on the ground, you can shoot them in the mouth. So the hunter gammas are a new enemy that shows up, and I would say they get used a decent amount in this game, at least compared to the zombie dogs and drain demos, especially if you play this on nightmare mode in Inferno. So that was a cool enemy. The sewers is cool. Once you get out of the sewers, then you fight Nemesis. Or no, not you don't fight Nemesis. You run into him again. You're running away from him. You're going through this kind of construction building, and then you eventually have a boss fight with him. You get away from there, and you go back into the city. So the construction area you were in, fight Nemesis, that was a decent area. A lot of it was kind of on the rails, but it wasn't as bad as the intro, but a lot of it was on the rails. You know, which, you know, I prefer video games to be more like video games, not kind of scripted on the rails movie like stuff. So you have a boss battle with Nemesis. Pretty good boss battle. You got to fight him on this rooftop, shoot the back of his flamethrower. Then you got to deal with him when it's gone, coming after you. And there's items you can get. And once you defeat him, you fall off the roof. Then you're going through the city. Cool area. You get to revisit like a city area from RE2 Remake that's connected to like the underground parking lot of RPD. And you can go to Kendo's gun shop. So you go to Kendo's gun shop and you get to see Kendo again briefly. So you get to see him and Chill have an interaction. So that's cool. It's cool they had him in there. Then you go through the alleyway using Kendo's key. Another cool area, it's like this tiny house you can explore. I wish there was a little bit more of those. I thought it was interesting. You know, I wish there was more of those. But once you get out of the house, then it becomes kind of like on the rails, like kind of this on the rails scripted movie like thing again, where you're running from Nemesis because he's back and he's shooting you with rocket launchers. You gotta dodge him while dealing with a few zombies here and there. Then you get out of there, and you make your way back through the city to go back to the subway station. And Carlos tells you he has a plan that he's gonna stop Nemesis. You go with Carlos to the gas station. He blows them up. Go back to the subway, and then this is when like Jill and Carlos splits up because Carlos has a mission to go to the RPD. So that section was decent, but I still didn't care for like the on the rails stuff. Whether it was like the flamethrower part before you fight him on the roof, or when he has his missile launcher shooting at you. I don't care for those sections in terms of the on the rail nature. That it bothers me that they did that. I'm not a fan of that. I prefer my video games to be more like games, not movies. So that's a problem for sure. But yeah, you go through that, go back to the subway station. Carlos and Tyrell are sent to the RPD because they're gonna find Dr. Nathaniel Bard on orders from Mikhail, the leader of the UBCS. So you're on the subway train, and they got this cut scene where him and, you know, Nikolai are talking, and then Nemesis shows up, kills the people on there. Jill's pissed. Nikolai leaves both of them behind because he says he's not after me. And then Mikhail sacrifices himself and blows up Nemesis. Pretty cool death, pretty cool moment he gets. And the train derails, and Jill's the one that survives. And the next section is like you play as Carlos in RPD section. It's definitely a really cool section. I like this next section where you basically play as Carlos. You go through the RPD. He's a pretty cool character. He's a really cool character. You got like an assault rifle and a pistol, and you go through the RPD with Tyrell, and you get to the RPD, which is it's a cool area. A lot of it didn't feel like scripted on the rails like some other sections I was talking about, which is nice. But it's a cool section because you get to go back to the RPD, same area as RE2 Remake. You get a cool cut scene where you get to see Marvin hesitating to fully kill Brad, someone he knew, and then he ends up getting bitten by him. So that shows us how Marvin got infected in RE2 Remake. Then you kill Brad. And you get to explore the RPD as Carlos to find out where Dr. Nathaniel Bard is. And it's a cool area, you know. It's the RPD. It's a cool area. You know, you have this assault rifle fun to use, deal with zombies. They have a liquor here on Nightmare Mode. There's a few more liquors, so that's cool. You get to fight a liquor here. Go through the RPD. That's a pretty cool section. You get, you know, parts for your assault rifle. So Carlos's RPD section is really cool. Then after that, you play as Jill again. You go through kind of like this prison type area. Then you come up top. You get like this bridge area, kind of like this plaza that's connected to a clock tower, and it's like a boss fight for the Nemesis section. It's a good part, but this part for Jill feels extremely short. Like it was always kind of jarring when I played it, because it's like you play as Jill in the first part of the game, then you switch to Carlos. When you switch back to Jill, her section is very short. It kind of reminded me of like the section from Revelations 2 where you go to the beginning of episode 4, and when you're playing as Claire and Moira, their part is so short compared to Barry. So it's just very weird to me. I think they could have made Jill's part a little bit longer, because her part's really short. You fight a few zombies, you go through a prison, you go through this area, you fight Nemesis, then you're back to Carlos. I think her section could have been longer, but you go through the area, you fight these zombies, then you fight Nemesis. It's a pretty good boss battle. I heard it's a frustrating fight. It definitely can be if you don't know what you're doing with the Mayan rounds, but it's a good boss battle. You fight Nemesis, he's mutated even further. So you fight him, it's a good boss battle. Then he infects you, and Jill is infected and she's knocked out. Before that, she was, you know, talking to Carlos, trying to get him to come there. So Carlos goes there and saves her. And then you go to the hospital. And I would say this is probably like the best part of the game, and definitely my favorite part of the game, the hospital itself. It is a fucking badass setting, and it's the best thing that they worked on in this game, I think. The hospital is fucking awesome. So you go to the hospital, because Carlos is taking Jill to the hospital because he can try to, you know, cure her with the vaccine because she's infected. And the hospital section itself is pretty cool. You go to the hospital as Carlos to get the vaccine. It's a cool area. You fight zombies. You get introduced to a new enemy type in the hospital, which is the Hunter Betas, and they look fucking awesome in this game. They got a really cool design. They kind of have a crab feel to them with how their mouth kind of moves, and they're a cool enemy because they're very challenging, very deadly to deal with. They take a lot of ammo, and they can one-hit kill you, so that's pretty scary. But yeah, the Hunter Beta is a really cool enemy. Hospital itself is just a cool area. It has like this dark feel to it. Really good music to the hospital area as well. That's another thing I forgot to mention. The music in this game is pretty good as well. They got a lot more music to this game, especially in the save room, compared to RE2 Remake, which didn't really have music, so to say. But the hospital area is really cool. You get the vaccine, you go back and give it to Jill, and you have this awesome section. A lot of people hated this section. I don't understand why. After you give the vaccine to Jill, there's like this section where Carlos has to, basically like a RE4 cabin type section, where you have to fight off a bunch of zombies while Tyrell is closing the shutters. I liked this section. It was a lot of fun because you have to hold off the zombies with Carlos to shoot the shit out of them. It's a fun section, and I don't know why some people hated it. I don't really get the hate for that section. I enjoyed it. As long as the entire game isn't like that, where it's like RE6 or non-stop action, I don't have an issue with it. It's fine to turn the action up every now and then, I think. But I like that section. But after that, you play as Jill again, and then you go through the hospital to get a few things that you couldn't get as Carlos. You get with her, like a Magnum, and you go through the little areas in the hospital. You fight a few hunters, and then you go to this like tunnel area on the way to the lab. So that's a pretty cool section. You have to get these fuses. You get to fight a few zombie dogs. You got to restore fuses to this area to go after Nikolai. So that's another cool area as well. You fight zombies. You fight another Hunter Gamma, also a hunter, and you fight zombie dogs as well. So nice variety of enemies there. You also meet another enemy type, which is the Paleheads. To be honest, I'm kind of mixed. To be honest with you, I don't like the Paleheads. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a fan of the Paleheads. Number one, they're just a copy of the Regenerators. I feel like one thing Capcom's done a lot is copy the Regenerators over and over again. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the Paleheads. I find them kind of silly, to be honest. Like, they have kind of this baby... they have kind of like this toddler, baby, child feel to them with the way their voice sounds, how they move fast towards you. They just don't look scary. They're not intimidating. They're challenging to fight because it takes a lot of bullets to put them down, but I'm not really a fan of the Paleheads because they just feel like a cheap rip-off of the Regenerators, and they're just not scary. They feel like a giant baby or a toddler coming after you. I'm not a fan of the fucking Paleheads, but that's a new enemy type you meet. They're just reused from RE2 Remake Ghost Survivors, so I don't know. I'm not a fan of the Paleheads. I think they should have just been cut from the game, personally. But you meet them, then you go through the lab section, and Nikolai left. You meet up with Tyrell. You go through the lab. He gets killed, but he had a lot of screen time. He was definitely a good character. Then you go through Nest 2, which is very similar to the Nest from RE2 Remake. So you go through the lab. Your job's to get the vaccine. Before you get it, you gotta like make your own vaccine. You also get this like umbrella key card to go through certain areas. You deal with Paleheads and zombies and a few Hunter Betas and stuff. Like I said, you fight more Paleheads in the lab. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the Paleheads. To me, they just come off as like silly and just lame and not scary because their voice is high pitched. They have kind of a big head and they run really quick. I don't know. They remind me of like a baby or a toddler. They're not scary in my opinion. I don't really, like I said, there's just a cheap knockoff of Regenerators. I don't really care for them. I think there's been better Regenerator knockoffs. Like at RE6, they had a better Regenerator knockoff. Even the Molded were a better knockoff of the Regenerators. So I don't know. Paleheads, I could take them or leave them personally. But you go through the lab, fight the Hunters, fight the Paleheads and zombies, make the vaccine. And after that happens, you get attacked by Nemesis and you get away from them. Go into a new area. There's another like kind of on the rails section. You have to tap this button or something to get away from Nemesis. You shoot the tank. Then you have another boss fight with Nemesis. And before that, Nikolai does something to you. Then you fight Nemesis again after that. You finally kill him. And then you have a finale where Nikolai and Carlos fight. And Jill doesn't want to shoot Nikolai because it might shoot Carlos. So then, it's a pretty cool section. Carlos fights Nikolai. Then you shoot Nikolai, leave him behind. Jill and Carlos get in the helicopter. And they get away from Raccoon City before it destroys. And that's pretty much a general synopsis of the game itself. And I would say overall with Resident Evil 3 Remake, I did enjoy this game and I did like this game, but it definitely could have been better. Some other things I could say about the game when it comes to the characters for Resident Evil 3 Remake, I think I like most of the characters in this game. I like Carlos, he's a cool character. I like Nikolai, he's a really cool villain. I like Mikhail, he's awesome, badass old man. Reminds me of Bill from Left 4 Dead. I like Tyrell, Brad, I like him. Most of the characters are pretty cool in this game. However, one character I don't like, and I know this will probably be an unpopular opinion, but this is how I've always felt. I'm not a fan of the main character of this game, Jill Valentine. I've never been a fan of Jill, and I'm just not a fan of Jill. She's a character that I just never cared for. I find her boring and bland. I've just never cared for Jill as a character. Out of all the Resident Evil games I've played, she's probably one of my least favorite characters. I mean, I'd rather play as her than Ethan, but still, I'm just not a fan of Jill. So, she's definitely one of the only characters I don't like in Resident Evil 3 Remake. I'm just not a fan of Jill Valentine. I just find her to be a boring character. She's not appealing to me. I prefer other female characters like Claire, Ada. I find them a lot more interesting and cooler. I don't know, I'm not really a fan of Jill Valentine. She just comes off as a boring, bland character to me. I just don't care for her. She just doesn't appeal to me. So that's definitely a character I don't like. And yeah, I'm just not a fan of the main character of this game. Just don't find her that interesting. I find her really boring and just not an interesting character. Never been a fan of Jill. Never really been crazy about her. So that's one of the things I don't like about Resident Evil 3 Remake. Nemesis is a cool villain. Some other things I'll say about the game. Like I said, I think the game has a lot of cool enemies. I like the Hunter Gammas, the Hunter Betas, the zombies are cool. I like the Lickers that are there. Drain Demos are cool, but I think the Drain Demos should have been used a lot more. I love the zombie dogs. They're cool, but they're very underused. They should have been in the game more. The Pale Heads, they're challenging. It's nice to have, some even more enemy variety, but just not really crazy about Pale Heads, like I said, because I don't find them scary. They remind me of giant babies or toddlers or kids just coming after you because they run really fast and they have like a high-pitched voice. I don't know. I don't care for the Pale Heads. I think they're lame enemies. I don't know. I don't find them intimidating personally. I think they should have had a different enemy rather than Pale Heads. Like in the concept art of this game, there's like certain enemies I saw that looked really cool that they cut from the game, and I really wish they would have put them in the game because in my opinion they looked really cool and I thought they looked better than Pale Heads. I think maybe instead of Pale Heads, just have more Drain Demos, just have more zombie dogs. Instead of just the areas with Pale Heads, just have zombie dogs and Drain Demos show up. I would have much preferred that. Or hell, throw in some enemies from RE2 Remake. Maybe fucking the fucking spiders. How about have spiders instead? The giant spiders. I'd rather have giant spiders. So yeah, not a fan of the Pale Heads, but most of the other enemies I like, and the designs are pretty cool. Most of the character designs are cool. The set pieces and set areas are really cool themselves, though I don't care for some of the on-the-rails stuff. The music for the game's really cool. The sound effects are really great. The guns sound really satisfying to use. The guns do look cool, the ones you get. The pistol's cool, the shotgun, grenade launcher, Magnum, assault rifle with Carlos. What I like about Jill and Carlos is both of their sections, all the times you play as them, they kind of have their own type of unique gun, and they have, attachments they can attach to their gun, which is pretty cool. One of the things I'm not really a big fan of, I don't like how every time you beat this game, you don't get to keep your gun attachments. Like, I know it's a different style than Resident Evil 4. It's kind of the old school style, but I don't know, it's just the gun attachments. I don't know, there should be some option where you can keep the gun attachments, because to me it's kind of stupid how you have to re-get them every playthrough. I'm going to do a jump cut real quick so we're out of time. Hold on. Alright, so I had to do a jump cut, so we're still talking about Resident Evil 3 Remake. Unfortunately, I was looking at the previous part. Sadly, even though I was wearing the headset with the mic, for some reason it wasn't recording through the fucking headset, which is bullshit. I don't know why the fuck it did that crap, so I'm just gonna do the rest of the video this fucking way. And I'm not redoing it because this is my first ever video game review. I'm trying the best I can, so yeah, I don't know why that happened. Usually when I plug the fucking headset in, it's supposed to record the audio, and it didn't record it. It recorded my camera audio, so fuck it. We'll just roll with the camera audio for the rest of the way, but I might as well take it off because it ain't even working. I don't know. And I'm not redoing the whole thing over. But yeah, like I was saying, Resident Evil 3 Remake, I do enjoy this game. Like I said, most of the characters are cool. Most of the areas are pretty cool. Um, and yeah, it is a good game overall. It just has a lot of issues. Um, and like I was saying, I wish that your gun attachments would carry over into the new game. Should have been like a new game plus option or something. I don't like how it's a constant reset. That's a big problem, I think. Um, but yeah, the game has good music, good enemies, good character design. Except Jill has a good amount of characters. Except Jill, story's pretty good though. Music's pretty good. Areas are pretty good. Gameplay is really fun, decently challenging. There's a shop system in this game with unlockables. I do like the unlockables. You have a costume for Jill. You have a bunch of guns you can unlock. So you have some fun unlockables, some fun challenge. There's some challenges you can do to get points for this shop, where you can unlock stuff in the shop. I do have some critiques as well for that. Um, I think there could have been a little bit more unlocks in terms of costumes, because there's only one outfit you can unlock for Jill, which is unfortunate. You can only get one outfit for Jill, which sucks. So yeah, you only get one outfit for Jill, which is unfortunate. Um, you can't unlock any costumes for Carlos, which really sucks. So yeah, Carlos doesn't really have any costumes, which is unfortunate. So that's definitely a problem I have with the game. Could have been more costumes. A lot of, so yeah, the shop's cool, but I think there could have been more costumes for the characters. The concept art and models I was looking at was pretty cool as well. There's some interesting difficulties in this game. There's, hardcore. There's Nightmare and Inferno, which are really hard. They change enemies up and item placement up. Really cool, because there's like liquors in the hospital and stuff like that. But one of my issues with those difficulties, especially the speedrun stuff you can do, is they let you use all the stuff in the shop with no penalties. I'm not a fan of that, because it didn't feel challenging. And yeah, I could have played through Inferno legit. I could have speedrun it legit. But what's the point if the game's just gonna let me cheat and just use all the best stuff in the shop and still get the same result? So I wasn't a fan of that. They should have made it to where you were forced to play in the higher difficulties, and you were forced to speedrun, and you couldn't use the shop. That's how they should have did it. Like Resident Evil 4. If you play Resident Evil 4 in professional, you can't do a new game plus. You got to do it brand new, and that's what makes it challenging. So I was not a fan of that. It's another problem with the game. But yeah, overall, Resident Evil 3 Remake, I would give it like in terms of a rating, I guess I could give it like a 7 out of 10. I think that's a fair rating, a 7 out of 10, because I do enjoy the game. It has a lot of good stuff, but I think a 7 out of 10 is fair, because, it definitely could have had more done with it. If there was a little bit more content, more costumes for Jill and Carlos, if Jill was a lot more of an interesting character, or if we could have a better main character to play as, more use of certain enemies like the zombie dogs and Drain Demos, less of that, or none of the fucking on-rail scripted stuff, some more content, not having the shop be abusive with certain difficulties, and things like that. I would say the score would be higher. So yeah, the score would be higher if they would get rid of the on-the-rails scripted sections, some more costumes for Jill and Carlos, require you to play the higher difficulties and speed runs, and you're not allowed to use the shop the first time around. That should have been in there. More costumes, more usage of certain enemies. What would also make the game better, I think the game should have been a little bit longer. This game is too short. They could have at least made this game at least an hour or two longer. It's way too short. My first playthrough was like 5 hours. The game is just way too short. It should have been a little bit longer. I know the original Resident Evil 3 was short, but I don't think you should follow the same rule with the remake. FF7 Remake ain't following the same rule, considering they're splitting that game up into parts, unlike the original. So, fuck it, Resident Evil 3 Remake shouldn't follow the same rules. So, yeah, and would I say this is a disappointment, though? I don't know if this is a disappointment, because I don't really have any attachment to the original Resident Evil 3, because I made a video a while ago talking about why I can't really get into the old school Resident Evil games, how I can't really get into the old school fixed camera angle games. So yeah, I just can't get into them. So I would definitely prefer this over the original gameplay wise. I was able to get into this, wasn't able to get into the original. I can't get into the fixed camera angle games, and it's not because I can get used to them, but I don't know, they just don't click with me. I don't find them fun, so I don't have any attachment to the original. So I wouldn't really consider this a disappointment. I just think it's a game that is good and fun to play, but I do think it has a lot of issues. And I think if that you know, if it was a little bit longer, if it was an hour or two longer, if they got rid of the on the rail scripted stuff, some more costumes for Jill and Carlos, if they used certain enemies a lot more, if they, you know, made it to where the higher difficulties were forced to be played without the shop, speed runs forced without the shop, you know, open the Raccoon City up a little bit more, make the game a little bit longer, you know, improve Jill as a character, make her a lot more interesting, or just have a better main character. You know, that's why I honestly wish they would have, like, I know this probably would have been controversial, but I probably would have been the only person who would have liked this. Kind of wish they would have just got rid of Jill for the remake. I would have liked that personally. I mean, you know, I'm not saying they should have did that, because I know that, you know, it's a remake of the original. You have to respect the original. It'd be crazy for them to get rid of Jill, but I don't know. Just not really a fan of Jill Valentine. Never been crazy about her. I just find her to be a boring character, and I do wish that maybe this game just starred Carlos, or it just had a better main character, or just make Jill more interesting, because I wasn't a fan of her. You know, so I would say that kind of, you know, dampens or hurts the experience a little bit, or what gives it a 7 out of 10 is the fact that I'm not really a fan of the main character. You know, I think having a likable main character can help the experience. I mean, I did like Resident Evil Village, but I don't give a shit about Ethan Winters. I don't give a fuck about that character. So I think having a good main character is important, because one of the original ideas for RE3, at least the original, was to have Hunk in there. I wish they would have went with that version instead, because I'm just not a fan of Jill. But yeah, overall, this is my review for Resident Evil 3 Remake. I give it a 7 out of 10. It's a good game. I did like it, but I do think it has a lot of issues, and they definitely rushed this. They could have took another year, took some more time developing this. They should have put more content into it, made it longer, include some of the stuff from the original they cut out, like the choices that changed the story, you know, costumes for Carlos, because there was none for him. Either make Jill more interesting, or maybe nothing could have been done about that, because maybe I just never would have been a fan of Jill. You know, I would, you know, if they would have fixed the other issues I had with the game, then I probably would have been able to put up with the main character that I don't like. But yeah, overall, that's my review of Resident Evil 3 Remake. 7 out of 10. Good game. Not a disappointment for me, because I don't have really any attachment to the original. But I think that, you know, they definitely could have did more with it. They could have took more time developing this. But it is a good game. You know, decent amount of content, good areas, good enemy variety, good enemy designs, good character designs minus Jill. Good cast of characters for the most part minus Jill. Good story. Good graphics, good visuals, good graphic style, you know, nice HDR color, cool guns to use, you know, cool enemies to fight, cool areas to go through. You know, it's got a lot of replay value to it, speed run it, playing higher difficulties, a lot of stuff to unlock in the shop, things of that nature. Good game overall, but like I said, what I think would have made it better, more usage of the enemies, make it a little bit longer, more content, more costumes, try to make Jill more interesting, or maybe it's not doable, and I would just probably never been a fan of Jill, because, you know, maybe there's just some characters that aren't for everyone, and I can accept that maybe. Good music. So yeah, that's what I gotta say about Resident Evil 3 Remake overall. Like I said, this is my first ever video game review. Like I said, it didn't really go according to plan, because for the first half of this video, I used a fucking headset and it didn't even pick the audio up. Pissed me the hell off. So yeah, that's my overall review for Resident Evil 3 Remake. Please let me know how I did. Give me honest criticism, feedback, and, you know, I want to do more of these, and I'm just going to upload this as it is. I'm not going to try to redo it and make sure I get the proper audio, because, you know, this is my first ever video game review, and I want to put it out like it is, because if I don't put one out, or don't try to put this one out, then I'm not going to be able to find out, you know, how I should go about it, you know. And let me know if I should have maybe gameplay and a face cam, or just gameplay, or I don't know, just I need honest feedback overall, because this is my first time doing this, you know, so I probably won't be the best at it. It's my first time doing this. I should get better with it over time. But yeah, just let me know how I do. Let me know how it came together. I tried my best to, you know, overall give my thoughts on Resident Evil 3 Remake and what I thought about it overall as a game. So yeah, it's my overall opinions on Resident Evil 3 Remake. 7 out of 10. Good game, but could have been a lot better if they had more development time and things of that nature. And that's all I gotta say. Peace. Let me know what you thought of this game.